Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of the Business BoardCast. I'm Nikki Larkin, and today I have with me an AI expert, Emma. Emma, welcome.
Thank you for inviting me onto the show. Really looking forward to today's conversation with you.
Excellent. So, as always, just a little bit of housekeeping for everyone. Please, if you're watching live, please do feel free. I always keep saying 3 instead of 3 at the moment, but yes, feel free to ask questions as we go along, and I will put them to Emma as we go along. Also do just say hi as well, because it's nice to know who's watching. Why don't you, if you're watching live, why don't you pop in there into the comments? Are you using AI at the moment? And if so, what are you using? Is there any particular things that you'd like to utilize at the moment, or what are you using it for? Be nice to hear those things as well. Okay, so Emma has got loads and loads of things to go through. She's got so much information, so I don't want to take away any of that time from her. So, sort of starting off, there's why should business be interested in AI? What are the benefits of AI to business, Emma?
That's a great question, Nikki. So yes, during this hype of AI, I'm sure most people attending today will realize that it's really difficult to go onto social media or LinkedIn and not hear about AI. But what we're seeing coming through in terms of the benefits of organizations adopting AI and having AI strategies is the increase in productivity. So people that are adopting AI now are really seeing those gains. So when we talk about productivity, it's people being able to do more jobs in the same amount of time. So for example, a solopreneur like myself, I'm probably doing the job of about 3 people thanks to generative AI. I certainly wouldn't be able to run my business the way I am running it without using generative AI. So productivity is a huge gain for anybody adopting AI. The other thing that we talk about is the efficiency. So Harvard Business School did a research project with executives, and they had a team of executives without generative AI, and then they gave a team of execs Gen AI tools, and they found that they increased their efficiency by 25%. So when we talk about efficiency, we're talking about how quickly it takes us to complete a job. And anybody, again, who is using generative AI for content creation, so text and content creation is definitely one of the highest use cases that we're seeing out there. Around about 63% of all generative AI users are using it for text generation, so with marketing content, blog posts. And I'm sure everyone will agree the amount of time it takes to write a blog post compared to the traditional way of writing a blog post is absolutely fantastic. I definitely save around 75% of time just by using generative AI. There's things that I don't allow it to do, so it doesn't pick the stories necessarily for me. It doesn't structure the stories, but when it comes down to writing it, it will save me a huge amount of time. The other thing that we don't really talk about with generative AI is the quality. So the quality of the output from generative AI is brilliant. The Harvard Business Study, the one that I spoke about earlier, showed that it was about an increase of 40% in terms of the quality of the work that people were producing when they were using generative AI. Now, when I was head of a marketing department leading teams, one of the hardest skill sets for me to recruit into a team was a really good writer. So somebody that was able to write grammatically correctly, to structure content correctly. That's actually a very, very hard skill to recruit for. But again, using generative AI, using ChatGPT, when you get it to write a blog post, the grammar, the way that it writes, the way that it structures its content is absolutely fantastic. And the amount of correction and error correction that you have to make to it is really quite minimal. So that's something we don't really talk about much, is the increase in the quality. And especially if you're working with people, I work with a lady, her second language is English, and she finds it so useful when she's writing content and when she's writing social media posts, the quality of her work and how fast she's actually to be able to produce work when we work together, which is absolutely brilliant. And then there's innovation. So generative AI, although we talk about one of the artifacts of generative AI, so generative AI, when we talk about an artifact, that's something that it can produce. So we know that today generative AI can produce images and videos and sound and music and all these kind of things. But when we talk about text, one thing we don't talk about is reframing that as knowledge, because actually what we are accessing through generative AI is a genius. these models are performing at the levels of PhD students. So when we look at accessing that kind of intelligence, we look at how we can use generative AI for innovations such as business strategies and for competitor analysis and idea generations and brainstorming. Something that would normally take half a day of a workshop to sit down and brainstorm the title for a campaign can literally be done in seconds using generative AI. It can come up with 20, 30 iterations of an idea for a campaign name in seconds. So it's that innovation that's really, really starting to come through.
We've got a practical application here coming in already from
brilliant.
Tom. So I do know Tom. He's a trainee accountant at Gorringe, and he's saying that ChatGPT is great for proofreading and polishing up emails, and that's great because I like the way that he's saying he's using it for proofreading and polishing up. So he's not using it to actually write them, but to improve upon them, and that is really good to do it that way.
Totally agree, Tom. It's absolutely brilliant for that, isn't it? And yeah, that's something I definitely use it for as well. And summarizing huge documents is another thing I use it for. So it can take a large document, quite a complex document, and it can translate it for you. And you can ask it to translate it into layman's terms or at the level of an A-level student, and it will break it down and give you terminology that is much more accessible depending where you are in terms of your level of understanding of a particular subject. So it's absolutely vital for stuff like that. And then when we combine all of that, so the productivity, the efficiency, the quality, the innovation, what we're seeing then is the impact on revenue. So those companies that are adopting generative AI are seeing an increase in the amount of money that they are making, which ultimately is why we're all in business. And the Harvard business study, it was an Accenture study, found that organizations that were introducing generative AI, it was impacting their income by about 2.5 times more in income generation. So that's the bottom line. That is where we're going to start seeing a huge skill gap between those organizations that are adopting it and those organizations that are slow to adopt it. And we saw that brilliant example last week of a law firm called Garfield. They have become the first AI-approved law firm in the country, and they have launched a new service. So they saw a problem, and the problem was that small businesses have huge amounts of debts that they have to chase, but they can't afford the legal fees. And so they came up with the £2 legal fee debt recovery letter that they're able to offer, and that has been approved by their governing body. So that's a really, really good example of innovation where they've seen a problem, they've used AI to solve it, and they're actually going to be able to solve a genuine problem for small businesses. So that's absolutely brilliant.
One thing that I use that saves an awful amount of time now is and there's various different iterations of them, but where you can record your Teams meeting and it turns it into the full transcript, but also the summary and actions and things like that. That saves up a whole load of time of not having to write up a load of meeting notes.
Yeah, that's a really, really brilliant use case. Yeah, I know a lot of people that do that. And it's like you say, it's a game changer, absolute game changer to get your meeting notes ready, action points ready, and its ability to do that is brilliant.
Yeah. So not that I want to get rid of people, just to be clear to any of my team, but previously in other organizations, you'd have people that most of their time was writing up notes to minutes for their boss and everything. And that is going to be probably reducing the amount of pool of admins that you'd need for those kind of organizations.
Absolutely. I was talking to a friend the other day, and I'm from the generation of taking shorthand notes in shorthand. So you sort of think that's a game changer. Brilliant. Do you want to show up? So what I want to talk about now is how do we take AI from that initial curiosity? And most people now are using a few use cases in their organizations, ChatGPT, prompting, but how do we scale it up? Because ultimately the big wins are going to come when you as an organization can scale the curiosity of AI and scale it up across your business. And one of the things that I would say that if you are looking to scale up AI into your organization, you've got to look at your organization through AI goggles. So that's really from the foundation up. You want to look at your entire business architecture. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is to introduce AI in silos. So that's one department to start using AI. So this integration framework takes organizations through the 8 critical pillars. So the 8 critical areas that you need to look at as an organization to make sure that you can create an AI strategy that's going to take on board every area of your business. So when we start with AI literacy, why is that so important? Well, to accelerate your literacy and understanding around AI, the terminology, there's so much terminology out there. And don't forget, AI has been around since the 1950s. So we've got this huge subject that we need to understand. It's not that we need to understand everything, but we do need to know the difference between what's an AI agent, what's an agentic AI workflow, what's agentic AI, what's AGI, all this terminology. It's really important that we begin to understand it, because what that's going to enable you to do is cut through the hype. So when you go onto LinkedIn and you're bombarded with the latest AI launch, if you understand the terminology, you're going to understand what's relevant to your business, what's not relevant to your business. That's ultimately going to save you a lot of time and a lot of headache. So accelerating your literacy across the board, everybody in the organization. Obviously, senior leaders will have a different level of understanding compared to employees through the business, but that's really important. The other thing I would say is do you really understand the level of AI competency of your employees? So a lot of employees will say, yeah, I know how to use AI, I know how to use prompting, but actually that range of ability is so broad that it takes some time to really understand what their competency levels are. There's a difference between somebody being able to put an AI prompt in to get a very basic return back, but do they know how to check whether there's a hallucination in the prompt that's been returned? So really understand the literacy within your organization. The other thing is practical skills. Absolutely. Prompt engineering is possibly one of the most important things you can teach people in your organization, communicating with these machines. Before ChatGPT, you had to be a computer scientist to communicate with the machine. So there's still a science that's attached to talking to the machine. So making sure that your organization understands the area of prompt engineering and how to do it is absolutely fundamental. Other skills like training the machines on your brand voice, so that it doesn't sound like ChatGPT, but it actually sounds like your brand, your key messaging, etc. That's another skill. So making sure that you are training your teams and they have the right skills to use the technology properly is fundamental. Around 70% of IT projects fail because there's not adequate training for the team when the technology launches. That was an industry report that was done by Forbes, but other organizations have done it. It's around 70%. That's a huge amount because we concentrate so much on the benefits and this is a great piece of IT, but we don't actually give people the time to use it properly and integrate it. And that would be fundamental for
and having worked in some very huge IT businesses, I can concur that. And that's why, there's so many government projects that have, spent billions and billions and not ended up, getting anything out of it. And for many other corporates have spent huge amounts. And so, yeah, you've got to follow through and make sure you've got that training. And otherwise you can easily waste a lot of money.
Definitely. And then, the use case identification. So the Office of National Statistics did some research amongst organizations and they found out of the 80% of UK businesses that weren't planning to adopt AI, those businesses said that understanding a valuable use case in their organization was the biggest barrier for them to pursue AI. So one of the 8 critical pillars of AI adoption is how do you identify where AI in your organization is going to be both feasible and valuable. And that's taking it beyond prompting ChatGPT. So it's looking at things like, I call it the ABCDE of use case identification. And a really broad way to look at where AI might benefit your organization is A, automation. What in your organization could be automated? So that's those daily repetitive tasks that could be automated. Start to look at those. That's things such as answering customer queries. So do your customers repeatedly ask the same questions in your organization? Could you get a chat bot for that? That could start to automatically answer those. free up some time. Or maybe it's internal HR questions. Could you have an internal chatbot that would start to answer those automatically? The other thing is budget. So where in your organization are you looking to reduce budget? Where are your big costs? What are you spending a lot of money on? Or what in your organization have you always wanted to do, but you've never had the budget to do it? For example, social media marketing or content marketing. Maybe you've always had to outsource that. Or maybe it's SEO. You've always had to outsource that. So maybe look at it from the financial point of view. And then the other thing is creating. So see, what are you creating on a daily basis as a business? You're creating reports, you're creating images, presentations. What is it that you're creating all the time? And then finally, data. So start to look at what data you have in your organizations, because that's fundamental to the success of some of the AI projects that you might want to implement into your organization. So that's just a very, very broad way of looking at areas within your organization. The other thing is data. So data is your most valuable asset in the world of AI. And again, it's part of AI literacy and understanding the capabilities, understanding the role of data. Without data, there would be no foundation models, there would be no large language models. Now, what's going to happen over the next few years is that the cost and the speed at which we can deploy small language models in our organization is going to get cheaper and faster. So that means that the availability of building a proprietary model for your very own organization is going to become so much more accessible over the next few years. I believe it's going to be as cheap and accessible as building a website one day. And so the role of data, of you to understand what data sets you have in your organization, what data could be useful, and to start preparing that, to start labeling it and start tagging it, is going to be very, very important. Some organizations think, well, we've got no valuable data, we haven't got anything. But if you've got a social media account, you've already got data there that generative AI can start to analyze for you. So really understand your data, start to understand where it is, where it's stored, where your gaps are, and perhaps some data strategies to start to get some valuable data for your organization. And then obviously risks, something that's super, super important. If you are an organization that's using generative AI, you should have an AI policy in place right away. So it can be very, very basic to start with. We can use AI for this, we can't use AI for that, we can't upload documents, but it's having that policy in place to put guardrails in place. There has been a survey amongst employees, and I can't remember which one it was, but a huge percentage of employees are actually scared of using AI in case they make a mistake, in case they put something up that's incorrect. So having that AI and policy in place not only builds that trust and that confidence in your team, but you're also protecting your organization. So have some risk mitigation strategies, make sure your team know that these machines do make stuff up. We've spoken before about the fact that they seem to be a bit prideful, like ChatGPT doesn't really like to say it doesn't know the answer to a question. It would actually rather make something up. So just to be aware of that and make sure you've got those risks. There was an incident with Air Canada. Air Canada had a chatbot on its website and it gave a customer completely wrong information, and the customer made a purchase based on that wrong information, and the customer went on to sue the company. So it's understanding those risks, the risk of bias in your data. So there was a very famous incident of Amazon. They used AI in their recruitment process. So they were filtering CVs for the job of a technical role. Now, they were using CVs from 10 years ago where it was predominantly men that were applying for the job. So there was bias in there. It was rejecting CVs from females. So it's just making sure that you understand what the risks are and that you are making sure that you're mitigating against those risks. Then the other thing is choosing vendors. So, gosh, there's so many vendors out there at the moment. How do we make that selection? Understanding what the important questions are when you are selecting a vendor is really crucial. Some of those questions include, what's the support once you purchase that? What's the training? What are the integrations? What can it integrate with? What's the APIs associated with that particular piece of tech? And making sure that you avoid tech debt. That's one of the biggest issues around AI. So tech debt is when we buy a piece of technology, 6 months down the line, we realize that it's not fit for purpose. And in the world of AI, the rate at which we are seeing AI applications launch, but not just launch, the mergers and the acquisitions that are taking place all the time make it a really, really unstable market. So something that I encourage people to do is really be aware of signing up for 12 months to any AI applications at the moment. It's moving so fast out there. Today's startup is tomorrow's acquisition. We've had some great examples recently. An organization called Prowly, which is an AI content creator, was purchased by SEMrush. And then we saw Ad Creative really recently. That was a really groundbreaking advertising tool that would create ad assets at scale and speed on brand. Again, that was purchased recently. And I had it with my Zoom. I was using Zoom, but there was an AI startup that came up that was offering different functionality. I was going to cancel Zoom and buy this new AI startup, but Zoom integrated the same technology into their platform. So the leaders are watching the startups as well, and they obviously don't want to be left behind. Their entire business model is dependent on us continuing to subscribe. So be aware of that when you're selecting your vendors. And then the final two things, that continuous learning mindset. We all experience the rate at which AI is developing. So it's how you're going to make sure that you and your team continually learn and have that time to do that. And how do you build that resilience? So yes, these machines are super intelligent, but what are the skills that you as a person want to lay hold of and ensure that you maintain? How much of your knowledge are you willing to outsource to a machine? And what are the guardrails you're going to put around yourself and your team to build that confidence? There's already been some research into the fact that it is eroding people's confidence because the machines are so good. Is a danger of eroding confidence in certain areas. So it's to be mindful of that and how you're going to guard against that and integrate that into your AI strategy. So that's some of the areas that you need to look at when you're looking to integrate AI into your organization. Another thing I would say is that it is just as important to understand your employees' attitude towards AI as it is to teach them how to use it. If you've got people out there that are frightened that AI is going to take their job, the chances of them adopting it and being fully on board is going to be a bit of a challenge. So find out where they are, find out what their attitudes are, and then use that to build your training on top of that. So they're the 8 critical pillars of AI adoption. It's something I cover in my leadership training. So please do go to my website to have a little bit more information on that.
We've had a question come through. It's not coming up on the comments there at the moment, but it is in the LinkedIn. So I'm just going to read it out for a moment. It's from Liz. What do you see as the business? Oh, it's a good one here. What do you see as the biggest misconception organizations have when starting their journey towards AI readiness?
I think the biggest misconception is cost. And that's one of the barriers that came out in the Office of National Statistics. And the reason why I say that cost is one of the biggest misconceptions is because if you have a £20 ChatGPT license, you understand how to use it, you understand the capabilities of ChatGPT, and that actually you have access to PhD level expertise, the amount of return you get on that investment is huge. So I think one of the biggest misconceptions is we need a huge budget to do this, when actually you don't. You can start with some very small pilot projects and get a huge amount of return on that. It's just making sure you know how to use it properly and safely.
Absolutely. Liz has got an extra question, and for some reason this one has come through, but the other didn't. But what is the biggest error you have seen from AI?
Oh, the biggest error. I mean, it hallucinates. I don't think I could say a biggest error, but one of the biggest risks I would say that everybody needs to be aware of is that AI will not make you an expert in an area that you don't know or that you don't have some awareness of. And I think some people, and there has been cases where some people have done this, but you do have to know the subject area because of the hallucinations, because the fact it makes up stuff. You do actually need to be able to check through that factually. I came across that when I was first studying AI over a year ago, and I was actually studying that field of information. So when it hallucinated, I was able to tell that it was hallucinating. Now, if I hadn't been studying it, I could have run with all of that information and it would have been incorrect. So that's something to really be aware of. It will not make you an expert. Those hallucinations are real. And actually, some of the latest models, interestingly, OpenAI are making more hallucinations than the earlier models. So it's becoming even more important to check that. So I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people can make with AI, is that they're not fact checking and they're thinking that it can make them an expert in something they're actually not an expert in.
No, absolutely, and we've seen that in the courts quite a lot, haven't we? Where junior barristers have referred in their bundles to cases that are made up cases that don't exist at all, because they didn't fact check it. They didn't actually go back to the original case notes, because, well, there wasn't a case anyway, but if they checked, they'd have seen that it didn't exist. So yeah, a lot of people are getting in a lot of trouble in the courts by trying to take shortcuts, and it can give shortcuts, because I know that a lot of solicitor firms are have been stopped recruiting at the sort of junior level, because they're getting AI to do a lot of prep, but they still need to have that person with the real knowledge to verify it. Which is good. So sort of like, reducing some of the paralegal roles and things.
Is there any more questions?
Yeah, I'm just thinking, if there's any other last minute.
Because one thing I did want to.
I've got one. It was if somebody has not done anything in our AI at all, where is the best place for them to start?
If you go over to my website, theAIadvantageacademy.co.uk, it's doing a Foundations in AI course. So that's a course that will accelerate your understanding of AI and get that basic literacy and understanding in place. You've got to know the risks as well as the benefits of AI. So to do a really basic level course like that is really important before you start. If you haven't already, sign up to something like ChatGPT and have a little play with that. But that's where I would start, something really basic. And don't worry, there's a lot of people that haven't. That's the other thing I would say to people is don't worry, don't be scared that you're really way behind. Yes, there's people that are really running with AI, but the majority of people are still in those early stages of discovery. So don't worry about it. One thing I just want to touch base on is AI agents, agentic AI, agentic workflows, etc., etc. That's something we're going to be hearing a lot of over the next few years. And I just wanted to break down that terminology to people. So we hear a lot about AI agents. So generative AI is the reactive AI. So we put a prompt in, it reacts and it comes back. AI agents, which is something that we're hearing a lot about, is the ability for the machines to do a task. So that would be, for example, I've got a task on ChatGPT, I've got an AI agent on ChatGPT, and what I can ask it to do is, okay, I want you to scan the internet every week and provide me with the top 5 stories affecting finances for small businesses. Now that AI agent will do that task for me on a weekly basis. So that's an AI agent. The other thing that we're hearing a lot about is agentic AI, and that is very, very different. So agentic AI, we are not there yet, but it is coming. Now, agentic AI is when the machines act very autonomously, and what they will do is we will give them a goal. And the difference between that is we'll say to them, I want to book a 5-star holiday to go to Cyprus, and agentic AI will be able to go out there. It will perceive what it needs to do to achieve that goal. It will decide what that process is going to be, and it will act on those decisions that it makes with little or no human input, whereas AI agents still require a lot of input. And then we have something called AGI, which is coming down, and AGI is where the machines are going to be performing over and above human capability. So I just wanted to talk about that. So AI agents are out there at the moment. We aren't building our own at the moment. You can use something like Make or Zapier to connect and create some agentic workflows. That's when you have a couple of AI agents working together to create optimized workflows. I just wanted to break that down because that's something that people will be hearing a lot about over the next few months.
Tom, so for a final question for today. I think remember, he's on his journey at the beginning of his accountancy career, and he's asking, how will AI change job responsibilities, tasks for accountants, and will AI ever replace them?
That's a big question, Tom. The reality is that if there is aspects of your job that can be done by AI, then potentially there is the opportunity for AI to take your job. What I would say to anybody starting out or at the beginning of their career is, rather than look at AI as a threat, start to look at AI in terms of how it can help you add value to who you are as a person within your role. And so what you can then start to do if you're starting on your AI journey is you can actually start to go to your boss and say, listen, this is my job role, but if I use AI, I can now start to do this for you as well. So you need to start to look at how AI can add value to you as a person. Then you are looking much more into the future, being able to future-proof your career and also enjoy AI and not see it as a threat. So
yeah, Tom, I just for personally, I don't worry. It's not going to. I don't think it's going to remove the requirement for accountants or tax advisors or whatever. It will change what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. So hopefully some of the more repetitive tasks can be automated. But you've just got to look at the things like, 20 years ago? Yeah, 20 years ago when, no, 30 years ago. Oh my God, I've been working too long. 30 years ago when self-assessment tax returns came in. And I remember I was on a marketing desk for them, answering calls for people that were interested in it, for HMRC. And but a lot of people at that time thought, oh no, if anybody can just fill in their tax return now, that means that they won't need tax advisors, they won't need accountants. The reality is there's going to always be people that are going to want to deal with people. But the point is you just need to upskill yourself so that you can do the top end level of things, and utilize it. But there will still be roles for you, Tom. Can we squeeze? Well, I'm just going to quickly squeeze in. Liz got another question. Or have we already done? Oh, I think we've done this one. That is the one that we did, but for some reason it's taken forever to come up, but we have answered that one already. Okay, fabulous. So Emma, do you want to just remind everyone where they can contact you for your full name, for LinkedIn, etc.?
Yeah, sure. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn, Emma Shepherd. Also have a company page on there, the AI Advantage Academy. Otherwise, pop over to my website, aiadvantageacademy.co.uk. But it'd be great to hear from you. I always love to hear how organisations and people are using AI in their lives. So please do get in contact.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Emma. And I'd just like to also point out the reason I got to meet Emma was because I've signed up for one of her courses through the Berkshire Growth Hub. I will keep on getting the wrong name for it, but Berkshire Growth Hub, which is part of the Thames Valley LEP. And we're very lucky because there's hardly any courses of this across the country. So we're very privileged to be able to have access to it. But so this course has already started, so you've missed out this time, but there is another cohort starting in the autumn. So I do recommend that you go and look at the Berkshire Growth Hub or contact Steve Bully and get yourself booked on for the autumn course. I've got a couple people from my team going in the autumn one because it's a mini MBA for AI. We've only had one session, but already learned a huge amount. Thank you so much, Emma. Thank you very much for your time today. And hopefully, I'm sure it will be extremely useful to everybody out there. And I'm sure I'd love to invite you back again in a few months because I'm sure everything will have moved on a great deal by that point.
Yeah, it will.
So perhaps once I've finished my mini MBA, we can get you back and see where we are with it all then.
That would be great.
So thank you everybody for watching live, or if you're watching on a recorded version. Just let you know our next session is in 2 weeks' time because we're fortnightly, and it's with Tim regarding ESG. So even though you may be an SME and think that ESG doesn't affect you, it does, especially if you're providing services for all products for large corporates, etc. So it's going to be a bit of a whistle-stop tour. So do look out for that. And then the session after that, so the first one in June, is going to be with Richard. And we are going to be talking about capital gains tax for residential properties because there's been huge amounts of change in that area. So any of you that have got own residential property, do do sign in, because he will be demystifying about what the changes are, and what you need to be looking out for. Anyway, have a great weekend, everyone. Thank you so much, Emma, and cheerio.